Matteo Berrettini, one of the biggest servers, and I think the best second serve kick in the game, is here at Kooyong. He's had an injury-filled couple of years, but he's clubhouse here at Kooyong now, but back in the day where I was playing the Davis Cup finals here and the Australian Open finals.
Coco Gauff's career on the edge, Pat Cash's brutal 5-minute fix bombshell plus Mom's emotional defense rocks tennis world. Mom is so proud of you, Coco. People may win through fame and pressure, but they will never have the heart and courage you carry every time you step onto the court. Those words, spoken by Candy Gauff in a rare moment of raw vulnerability, have sent shockwaves through the tennis community this week. In a sport where emotions are typically masked behind stoic game faces in corporate-approved interviews, Candy Gauff's heartfelt tribute to her daughter reminded millions of fans worldwide that behind the headlines, the prize money, and the relentless scrutiny stands a young woman carrying a weight most of us will never understand. But here's where things get complicated, controversial, and downright explosive. While Coco's mother speaks of courage, character, and resilience, a tennis legend has just stepped forward with a critique so savage, so brutally honest, that it's threatening to overshadow everything Coco has accomplished. Former Wimbledon champion Pat Cash has publicly declared that Coco Gauff's biggest weakness, the one glaring flaw that has haunted her career and cost her countless matches, could have been fixed in just 5 minutes. Yes, you heard that correctly. 5 minutes. According to Cash, the serving nightmare that has defined Coco's recent seasons, the double faults that have made even her most devoted fans cringe, and the mental anguish that comes with knowing your biggest weapon is also your biggest liability, all of it was completely avoidable. Welcome back to Court Vision Plus, the channel where we don't just report tennis news, we dissect it, analyze it, and give you the unfiltered truth that mainstream media won't touch. Today, we're diving headfirst into the most polarizing story in tennis right now. We've got a mother's emotional defense of her daughter's character. We've got a legendary champion essentially calling out Coco for years of stubborn mistakes. We've got shocking statistics from the 2025 season that will make your jaw drop. And we've got the roller coaster drama of the 2026 United Cup where Coco simultaneously looked like the future of American tennis and a player still haunted by demons she can't seem to exorcise. This is not just another tennis story. This is about legacy, pressure, family, and the brutal reality of what it takes to be truly great in professional sports. So buckle up, because we're about to take you on a journey through the Coco Gauff paradox, a story that has everyone from casual fans to tennis insiders asking the same question: is Coco Gauff on the verge of total dominance, or is she sabotaging her own career by refusing to accept help? Let's start with the moment that captured hearts around the world. Amidst all the technical analysis, the statistical breakdowns, and the armchair coaching that floods social media after every match, Candy Gauff stepped forward to remind us of something we often forget in our obsession with wins and losses. She reminded us that her daughter is human. In an emotional statement that has now been viewed millions of times across various platforms, Candy spoke not about forehands or service motions or tactical adjustments. She spoke about the person behind the athlete. She revealed intimate details about Coco's character that the cameras never capture. She told stories of how Coco, even during her darkest professional moments when the serve wasn't working and the critics were circling like vultures, always made time to encourage younger players on tour. She described how Coco would stay after practice sessions to hit with aspiring juniors, how she would offer genuine advice without any expectation of recognition or praise, and how she carried herself with grace and humility even when the pressure threatened to crush her. Candy's voice reportedly cracked with emotion when she said something that should be plastered on every sports psychology textbook in existence. She said that what makes her most proud as a mother is not the titles Coco has won, not the millions of dollars in endorsements, not the fame or the magazine covers or the highlight reels. What makes her proud is that through everything, the scrutiny, the pressure, the unrealistic expectations placed on a teenager turned young adult, Coco has never lost herself. She has never become arrogant. She has never forgotten where she came from. She has never treated people poorly because she could get away with it. In an era where we've seen countless young stars implode under pressure, develop massive egos, or completely lose their sense of identity, Coco Gauff has remained grounded. That statement from Candy wasn't just a proud mother bragging about her daughter. It was a powerful reminder that in our rush to analyze serve percentages and unforced errors, we sometimes forget that these athletes are real people navigating impossible circumstances. Coco was thrust into the global spotlight as a 15-year-old at Wimbledon when she beat Venus Williams in one of the most emotional matches in recent tennis history. Since that moment, she has lived her entire young adult life under a microscope, with every mistake magnified, every weakness exposed, and every triumph immediately followed by demands for more. The tennis world paused when Candy delivered those words. Social media erupted with support. Fans who had been critical of Coco's technical flaws suddenly remembered why they fell in love with her in the first place. Because beyond the stats, beyond the rankings, Coco Gauff represents something bigger. She represents resilience, authenticity, and the courage to keep fighting even when the odds seem stacked against you. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn into controversial territory. Because while Candy Gauff was delivering this heartfelt defense of her daughter's character, the harsh realities of professional tennis were coming at Coco from another direction entirely. And they were coming in the form of Pat Cash, a man who doesn't sugarcoat anything, who has never been afraid to speak his mind, and who has just lobbed a criticism at Coco that might be the most damaging thing any respected tennis figure has said about her career. Pat Cash is not some random talking head with no credibility. This is a former world number 4, a Wimbledon champion, and someone who has worked extensively as a coach and analyst in the years since his playing career ended. When Pat Cash speaks about tennis technique, people listen. And what he said this week about Coco Gauff's serve has sent absolute shockwaves through the tennis community. In a recent interview that has since gone viral, Cash didn't dance around the issue. He didn't offer diplomatic praise before delivering his criticism. He went straight for the jugular. According to Cash, Coco Gauff's serve problems, the issues that have plagued her for years, that have cost her matches she should have won, that have made her the subject of endless debate and analysis, could have been fixed quickly and easily if she had just been willing to listen to the right people at the right time. Cash claims it could have been, and these are his exact words, a 5-minute fixing job. Let that sink in for a moment. 5 minutes. Not 5 months of intensive training. Not 5 years of gradual adjustment. 5 minutes. Cash is essentially saying that the technical flaw in Coco's serve is so obvious, so straightforward, that someone with the right expertise could have identified and corrected it almost immediately. But according to Cash, instead of accepting this simple fix, Coco has spent years stubbornly trying to work through the problem in her own way, and it has cost her dearly. The frustration in Cash's voice during the interview was palpable. He wasn't being cruel for the sake of headlines. He was speaking as someone who has witnessed greatness sabotaged by stubbornness. And here's where his criticism gets really specific and really personal. Cash revealed that he actually knows Coco's current biomechanics coach, Gavin McMillan, quite well. In fact, Cash worked directly alongside McMillan when they were fixing the serve of American player Brandon Nakashima. According to Cash, he saw firsthand how McMillan operates, how he diagnoses serving problems, and how effective his methods can be when a player is willing to fully commit to the changes. Cash credits McMillan with transforming Nakashima into what he calls a serving machine. Nakashima's serve went from a weakness to a legitimate weapon under McMillan's guidance. So Cash's logic, and it's hard to argue with his reasoning here, is brutally simple. If Gavin McMillan is this serving guru, if he has a proven track record of fixing serves, and if Coco is now working with him, why is she still struggling? Cash's implication is clear. The problem isn't the coaching. The problem might be the player's willingness to accept change. Cash went even further, suggesting that modern players often shoot themselves in the foot by not listening to experienced legends or by taking too long to accept the technical changes they desperately need. He implied that egos, comfort zones, and resistance to drastic technical overhauls are keeping talented players from reaching their full potential. And in Coco's case, he believes she has wasted years of her prime fighting a battle she didn't need to fight. Now, you might be thinking this sounds harsh. You might be thinking Pat Cash is being unnecessarily critical of a young player who has already accomplished more than most professionals ever will. But before you dismiss Cash's comments as the ramblings of a bitter old champion, we need to look at the evidence. We need to look at the cold, hard statistics from the 2025 season. Because folks, the numbers are absolutely shocking. We went deep into the data, and what we found justifies every bit of Cash's frustration. In the 2025 WTA season, Coco Gauff didn't just lead the tour in double faults. She didn't just have a bad year with her serve. She was in a completely different universe from everyone else, and not in a good way. Coco Gauff committed 431 double faults during the 2025 season. Let me repeat that number because it's so staggering it bears repeating. 431 double faults in a single season. To put this in perspective, the player with the second worst double fault record on tour was Russia's Ekaterina Alexandrova, who had 300. That's a difference of 131 double faults. Coco didn't just barely lead the category. She lapped the field. But here's the statistic that should absolutely blow your mind and prove just how much of an outlier Coco was. The gap between Coco's 431 double faults and Alexandrova's 300 double faults was the same as the gap between Alexandrova at number 2 and the player ranked 35th in double faults. Think about that mathematical absurdity for a moment. Coco was so far ahead of the pack in this negative category that the distance between her and second place was equivalent to the distance spanning 33 other players. That's not just a weakness. That's a statistical anomaly. That's a career-defining problem that demands immediate attention. Now imagine, just for a moment, what Coco Gauff's career would look like if she were even just average in this one specific aspect of her game. Not good, not great, just average. She has already won a Grand Slam, the US Open in 2023, with this glaring weakness. She has already beaten the best players in the world. She is arguably the best pure athlete on the women's tour right now. Her speed, her court coverage, her ability to chase down seemingly impossible balls, all of that is elite. Her backhand is world-class, maybe the best backhand in women's tennis. Her fighting spirit, as her mother so eloquently pointed out, is unmatched. But she's playing every single match on hard mode because she's essentially giving her opponents free points. She's spotting them a game or two per set just from unforced serving errors. The mental toll of that cannot be overstated. Imagine standing at the baseline, knowing that your serve, the shot that is supposed to start each point with an advantage, is actually more likely to be a liability. Imagine the psychological weight of double faulting at 30-all in a crucial game and immediately feeling the momentum shift. Imagine your opponent visibly relaxing during your service games because they know there's a strong chance you'll beat yourself. This brings us to right now, to January 2026, to the new season that was supposed to represent a fresh start for Coco Gauff. Because Coco isn't stupid. She knows the problem. She's not hiding from it. She's not in denial. In late 2025, she made the bold decision to hire Gavin McMillan, the exact man that Pat Cash praised in his criticism. McMillan isn't your typical tennis coach who focuses on strategy and shot selection. He's a biomechanics specialist, someone who looks at the serve as a pure physics equation, as a series of movements that can be optimized for maximum efficiency and consistency. McMillan has a proven track record. He helped Aryna Sabalenka fix her serve when she had what's known in tennis as the yips, when her serving motion became so inconsistent and anxiety-inducing that she couldn't reliably get the ball in play. Under McMillan's guidance, Sabalenka transformed her serve from a source of terror into one of the most feared weapons in women's tennis. He did the same thing for Brandon Nakashima, the American player that Pat Cash mentioned. So the question everyone has been asking since this partnership was announced is simple. Has it worked? Has Gavin McMillan fixed Coco Gauff's serve? The answer, and this is where the story gets really complicated and really interesting, is that it depends on which match you watch. We just witnessed Coco Gauff compete at the United Cup in Australia, the team competition that kicked off the 2026 tennis season. And in that tournament, we saw two completely different versions of Coco Gauff, almost as if there are two players inhabiting the same body. On one hand, we saw the dominator, the version of Coco that gives every opponent nightmares. In the semifinals against Poland, Coco faced her ultimate rival, the world number 2 and multiple Grand Slam champion Iga Swiatek. This is a rivalry that has been brutally one-sided for most of its existence. Swiatek owned Gauff for years, beating her in match after match, often in devastating fashion. But something has changed recently. Something has clicked for Coco in this matchup. In Sydney, on a big stage with enormous pressure, Coco Gauff played absolutely lights-out tennis against Swiatek. She dominated her 6-4, 6-2, in a performance that had tennis analysts searching for superlatives. This wasn't a lucky win. This wasn't Swiatek playing poorly. This was Coco imposing her will, dictating play, and showing the world exactly what she's capable of when everything comes together. And here's the crucial detail that proves Coco is evolving. This victory marked her 4th consecutive win over Swiatek. She hasn't just figured out how to beat IGA once. She's cracked the code. She understands the matchup now. She knows how to neutralize Swiatek's weapons and exploit her weaknesses. In that match against Swiatek, the serve held up. The double faults didn't derail her. She looked confident, poised, and utterly in control. She looked like the future world number 1, like someone on the verge of total domination of women's tennis. But then, just when you thought the narrative was simple, just when you thought maybe Pat Cash was wrong and the serve problems were finally solved, we saw the other side of Coco Gauff. Despite that massive victory over Swiatek, the United States run at the United Cup came to an end. The tie against Poland came down to a deciding mixed doubles match, and Coco, partnering with Taylor Fritz, lost to Poland's duo. The Americans were eliminated, and the dream of a United Cup title vanished. But even more concerning than that loss was what happened in an earlier match in the tournament. Before her dominant win over Swiatek, Coco faced Spain's Jessica Buzas Monero, a player ranked well below her, a match Coco should have won comfortably. And in that single match, all the old problems came roaring back. Coco hit 14 double faults. 14. In one match. Against an opponent she was expected to beat. That's the kind of performance that makes Pat Cash's criticism sting even more. Because it proves that the problem isn't completely fixed. Yes, Coco can summon a great serving performance when she's facing Swiatek, when the adrenaline is pumping, when she's locked in mentally and emotionally. But against a lower-ranked opponent, when perhaps the focus isn't quite as sharp, when the urgency isn't quite as intense, the mechanical flaw reasserts itself. The double faults pile up. The unforced errors mount. And suddenly, a match that should be a straightforward victory becomes a battle. This is the paradox of Coco Gauff in 2026, and it's the reason this story is so fascinating and so frustrating for everyone watching. She is winning. She is beating the best players in the world. She is continuously evolving as a competitor. But the 5-minute fix that Pat Cash talks about, the simple technical adjustment that should have solved everything, remains somehow elusive. Cash believes, and he's probably right about this, that the problem is as much mental as it is physical. He has noted that Coco's double faults tend to come in clusters, in what he calls stretches. She'll serve perfectly for 3 or 4 games, looking like she has one of the best serves on tour, and then suddenly, without warning, she'll serve 3 double faults in a single game. That pattern suggests panic. That pattern suggests she starts overthinking the mechanics instead of just trusting her motion. It's the tennis equivalent of a golfer getting the yips or a basketball player suddenly unable to make free throws. The physical ability is there, but the mental confidence wavers, and the whole thing falls apart. Pat Cash's frustration comes from his belief that if Coco had hired someone like Gavin McMillan years ago, if she had been willing to make drastic technical changes earlier in her career, this entire nightmare could have been avoided. When Cash says he worked alongside McMillan and watched him become a serving guru, there's an unmistakable tone of "I told you so" in his voice. He's suggesting that the tennis establishment knew how to fix this, that the expertise was available, but that Coco or her team or someone in her camp resisted making the necessary changes until the problem became so severe it could no longer be ignored. There's also an undercurrent in Cash's criticism about generational differences in how players approach coaching. Cash comes from an era where players were expected to be coachable, to listen to their elders, to trust the experience of champions who had been through the wars. He seems to believe that modern players, surrounded by large support teams and sometimes conflicting advice, are more resistant to the kind of tough love and drastic changes that characterized coaching in his era. But here's where we need to pump the brakes on Cash's criticism and remember Candy Gauff's powerful words. Because maybe, just maybe, the struggle is part of what makes Coco Gauff special. Maybe the fact that she has won Grand Slams despite serving 431 double faults in a season is a testament to her extraordinary talent and mental toughness. Maybe battling through this weakness, refusing to give up even when her biggest weapon becomes her biggest liability, is exactly the kind of character that Candy was talking about. Coco Gauff is not a robot. She's not a machine that can be programmed and reprogrammed with a simple software update. She's a human being who is figuring out her career in real time, under unimaginable pressure, with millions of people watching and judging her every move. Yes, she has struggled with her serve. Yes, those struggles have cost her matches and probably rankings points and prize money. But she has also shown incredible resilience, adaptability, and growth. So what do you think? Is Pat Cash right? Is Coco's serving issue a simple fix that she's stubbornly ignored for too long, costing her years of prime performance? Or is he being too harsh on a young champion who is already achieving incredible things despite this weakness? How much do you appreciate Candy Gauff's emotional defense of her daughter's character in a sport that too often reduces athletes to statistics and rankings? And perhaps most importantly, do you believe Coco Gauff will finally solve her serving problems in 2026, or will this be the flaw that prevents her from becoming the dominant force everyone expects her to be? I want to hear from you in the comments below. This is the kind of story that gets tennis fans debating for hours, and I want to know where you stand. Are you Team Pat Cash, believing in tough love and quick technical fixes? Or are you Team Candy Gauff, believing that character and resilience matter more than any single technical flaw? If you made it this far into this deep dive, you're clearly passionate about tennis, and that means you need to be part of the Court Vision Plus family. We're not just another tennis channel. We're the channel that gives you the unfiltered truth, the controversial takes, and the deep analysis that mainstream sports media is too afraid to touch. So here's what I need you to do right now. Smash that like button. Seriously, hit it like Coco Gauff hits a backhand down the line. That like button tells YouTube that this content matters, that people want this kind of honest, in-depth coverage, and it helps the channel grow so we can keep bringing you these stories. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Court Vision Plus and make sure you turn on the notification bell. We're just getting started with this channel, and we have so much incredible content coming your way. We're going to be covering every major tournament, every controversy, every breakthrough moment in tennis. We're going to bring you the stories that matter, with the depth and honesty they deserve. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell every tennis fan you know to subscribe to Court Vision Plus because we see the game differently.
Oh, no,
thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
I did it my